I think the biggest story of the news cycle is, along with Trump loves Hitler, which we'll talk about, is her performance last night was the last straw for a lot of Democrats. No more. The more she does it, the better she'll get. Dan, talk about what you viewed about her performance last night. Why it's considered in Democratic circles to be such a disaster.
Yeah, I think the good news was she drove her message. As you said, Trump, the Hitler remark, Trump is a fascist. That is in most headlines, in most opening paragraphs of the story. And for people who don't pay attention day in and day out and glance at the news, in that regard, it was mission accomplished. The challenge is, as we've talked about now going back to August, is, and you heard it in the questions that were asked to her last night, people who want to know more about her. And what you saw last night, time and again, was when she was asked a question, and I don't believe a single question was like totally out of the blue where, like, anyone on this Zoom would be taken aback of like, ooh, that's a curveball. Her initial reaction often is a facial expression of almost surprise and discomfort. Then you can see the wheel spinning in her head. Kind of, how do I say something without saying anything, without offending, without kind of really answering the question? And then pivoting, as Joe Biden famously said about kind of Rudy Giuliani, a noun, a verb, and Trump is a fascist, right? And you could see the voters' kind of faces. And I think a lot of these people wanted to be for her, kind of like, I'm not feeling you, right? It's a cold kind of like a teacher talking to a pupil. And I think, we saw this in 2019. And there was a hope that as she did more interviews and settled down and got more comfortable, that you would see kind of a human being with some passion, some humor, because we talk about it. Trump is having fun. Like, it is clear as day that he's feeling pretty good. So I think the frustrating part to Democrats is it is clear that she is just not really capable right now of answering that question, why should I be for you? And I hope that enough voters decide that she doesn't have to, but I don't feel confident about that.
Trisha, I want you to try to help solve a mystery that I get asked about every day, and you probably do too. Forget asking her, how would you deal with the China invading Taiwan? Or what kind of person would you appoint to the Fed? Or what would you do about agriculture policy? She's basically, from the very first interview and in the town hall, she's asked the same questions. Why didn't you stop the border down earlier? What's your view on fracking? How would you be different from Joe Biden? How do you feel about this issue of some of your past positions, including taxpayer-funded surgeries for illegal immigrants? These are the same questions over and over. And what people ask me all the time, and I'm asking you, how could the staff not have her have better answers to these questions? She's gotten 15 mulligans, and her answers, as Dan just characterized it, and as David Axelrod said word salad last night. How could it be that she's not prepared to answer these questions better?
She's largely known to over prepare, is my understanding. I mean, there's that notorious donor dinner where she did some sort of a mock dinner. So, I mean, when she's on her talking points, when she's able to put them in a basket, when she's able to talk about what she's done with narcotics, she's pretty good. But the problem is that it always seems like during the headlines, it always seems like this is a surprise question, kind of as Dan mentioned before. But I think part of the issue is she's unwilling or unable to create any daylight between her and Joe Biden. That's a big part of the problem, is that, anything as simple as the economy, I wish we would have taken inflation more seriously earlier. I wish we would have taken, gotten something done in legislation or with Congress on housing earlier. These are pretty easy, simple things that she could be navigating. And instead, it always seems like it's a real major surprise. And it seems like her closing argument is very much crystallizing in that Trump is a fascist, I'm not Trump, and that's why you should vote for me. Nothing about the economy, really little about immigration. It's kind of going back to the same old talking points, and it might be helping with the base, but I think the real problem with the last night, it was just more of the same. It's not going to move the needle, and people are starting to, really realize we're getting down to the wire.
Yeah. Look, she's a human being, and there's psychology here for sure. But if you're the staff, if you were hired as her consultant and you were really trying to help her going into that town hall, and you said, all right, you've answered the question of why didn't you do more on the border earlier, but we don't think those answers have been good enough. We think you need a better answer. Like, she doesn't have a better answer. So again, the question I get asked is the staff letting her down, or is she simply, because of psychology and limitations, simply not able to give better answers to drive a message?
I think it's been enough time. I think everyone could see, you know, if this is the first 2 weeks of the campaign, I think JD Vance, I don't think he was strong the first 2 weeks, but then he kind of found his footing. And I think we figured she would by this point as well. But I think there actually are simple answers for the policies. Something like that 2021 border bill it was largely a messaging bill because it allowed almost every illegal immigrant to have some sort of pathway to citizenship. So I don't know if I can blame the staff. It ultimately is the candidate. She should be doing her prep work.
Yeah,
All
I mean, that staff, Stephanie Cutter, Brian Fallon, David Plouffe, I cannot believe that they, you know, that they have not thought about this, that they're not seeing the same data that everyone else is seeing and getting the same earful from people. And not to, you know, throw Harris totally under the bus, but the other challenge is her answers keep changing. Like, I actually thought her best answer on how are you different from Joe Biden came yesterday when she very calmly said, I'm going to focus on the fact that prices are too high. Like, that was the first time that I heard her give a crisp, succinct, and then she boom. Now we can argue over price gouging and like what her solutions are. But in the past, she's just like, I'm not Joe Biden, ha ha ha, right? Like, I'm a Black woman, like, end of discussion. But it's just every day there's a different way that she's answering questions. And that is kind of not a good sign 10 days out.